Okay, this is Block 10, the 1960s, Section 2, Black Power, with the section beginning Watts. In 1965, days after the Voting Rights Act passed, there was a fundamental shift in the civil rights movement, in the movement between Black America and White America. That Martin Luther King's greatest success was the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And then leadership of the black community in the United States kind of passed in a lot of ways out of Martin Luther King's hands and into the hands of much more radical black Americans willing to or unwilling to follow Martin Luther King's message of Christian nonviolence. And it started, it was almost perfect in a way, so timed so historically perfectly that on the day, pretty much the day the Voting Rights Act was passed, in Watts, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, there was an incident between a black motorist and a white police officer, and it turned into an absolute destructive riot. For nearly a week, in the black neighborhood of Watts in Los Angeles, police and then the National Guard, it was all they could do to contain the violence, being directed at their own community by these black Americans. And there was a lot of reasons that housing discrimination caused significant overcrowding in black neighborhoods. The baby boom hit black America just as much as it hit white America, so you had a lot of teenagers out on the streets with limited economic prospects. And it depending on the way you looked at it, this was either, a legitimate, explosion of black anger towards a racist system, or it was, black Americans finally getting civil and political rights, and then look what happened after that. It was an opportunity for, people on both sides of the question to kind of say, "I told you so" to the other. In the Watts riots, 34 people were killed, $40 million in damage was done, and it marked, it marked the end of Martin Luther King's Christian nonviolence and marked the beginning of a strident black nationalism and separatism that would be marked by militant confrontation between black and white. And the civil rights movement and the movement for equality moves out of the South, out of the home of American racial problems, the South, and into American urban areas, the segregated cities of the North and the segregated cities of the West. Now, when I say segregated, that is not legal not legal Plessy v. Ferguson segregation, but it's segregation based on self-segregation. It's segregation based on unwritten agreements that, for example, blacks would give much harder mortgage lending terms to blacks than they would to whites, which served to segregate blacks, even though there was no legal reason for segregation. But what we're going to have now, in the 1960s, the late 1960s, is a confrontational attitude between blacks and whites, not focused in the South, but focused in the ghettos and urban areas of the North and the West. And it started in Watts in Los Angeles.